You've probably heard about huge traffic jams in cities. But have you ever imagined a traffic jam that lasted not just for days or weeks, but for 8 long years? In 2015, a massive jam on a 50-lane highway in Beijing brought traffic to a standstill. In 1980, a traffic jam in France stretched for 175 kilometers and took days to clear. Brazil, Germany, and the US have also seen jams where vehicles remained stuck for up to 12 days. Now, the Suez Canal became the dividing line between Israeli and Egyptian troops. With Israeli forces to the east and Egyptian forces to the west, there was no way forward or back. They became prisoners of geography and politics. Most of the crew members were called back, and only about 10 men were left on each ship to maintain basic operations. These small crews were rotated every few months, in the hope that one day the ships could sail again. Hundreds of other ships were also stopped at either end of the canal, and global trade suffered badly. A ceasefire agreement was signed on October 24, 1973, and both countries began pulling back their troops. But even then, the ships couldn't leave. The canal was filled with wreckage, sunken ships, war debris, and deadly mines. Israel eventually returned the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt, and Egypt became the first Arab country to officially recognize Israel. It took Egypt 2 more years to clear and clean the canal fully. They organized activities to stay busy and fight off loneliness and depression. Although they were neutral in the conflict, and both Israel and Egypt allowed food and supplies to reach them, their isolation continued. Then in 1973, another war broke out, the Yom Kippur War, this time initiated by Egypt. The fighting was intense, and one stray Israeli rocket accidentally struck and sank an American ship that had been stuck in the canal. A church was set up on the German ship for Sunday gatherings. The Bulgarian ship hosted movie nights, while the Swedish ship held pool parties, and the British ship became a place for football games. They even organized the Bitter Lake Olympics in 1968. Freight costs rose dramatically, and ships were forced to take the long way around Africa once again. Desperate to prevent further Israeli advances, destroyed its own bridges, planted underwater mines, and positioned ships to block the canal. But none of these compare to what happened in the Suez Canal. Yes, it's real. And today we'll tell you the unbelievable story of the world's longest and strangest traffic jam that didn't happen on a road. But in the famous Suez Canal, before it was constructed, ships traveling from Europe to Asia had to sail all the way around Africa, a journey of months. But the Suez Canal changed that, reducing travel time to days and saving ships nearly 10,000 kilometers. Of the original 15 ships, 14 managed to sail out. When they returned home, they were welcomed with great celebration. The reopening of the Suez Canal restored global trade routes, and traffic began flowing once again. It also protected ships from dangerous pirate-infested waters around Africa, especially those with Somali or West African pirates. Traffic jams are common in many parts of the world. The Suez Canal is a vital artery for global shipping and trade. Our story begins on June 5, 1967. That morning, 15 cargo ships entered the canal from the Mediterranean side, expecting to cross it in about 12 hours. But these ships were unknowingly sailing into one of the tensest moments in Middle Eastern history. Tensions between Egypt and Israel were rising, and within hours, war broke out. Israel launched a surprise attack on Egypt, and bombs and missiles began raining down near the canal. In response, Egypt quickly shut down the Suez Canal from both ends. What followed was the 6-day war, during which Israeli forces captured the entire Sinai Peninsula. The 15 cargo ships that had already entered the canal were now trapped in the Great Bitter Lake, a part of the Suez Canal. As months passed, the shipping companies realized that the crisis wasn't ending anytime soon. Over time, these stranded sailors formed friendships. Years passed. Dust and sand began settling on the ships. The war lasted a week and resulted in thousands of casualties. Finally, on June 5, 1975, exactly 8 years after they first entered the canal was reopened. This 8-year traffic jam is unlike anything the world has ever seen. Over time, relations between Egypt and Israel improved,